So welcome back and thanks for joining us again. I hope that you've been enjoying the site so far with all the information, and today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to be talking to a real estate attorney. Can't hit a whole lot of subjects, but we're going to hit some of those that are probably most popular. And this is a special guest because transparency, he actually is an attorney that handles a lot of stuff for my association, which is why I do trust to take my business to him and my questions and concerns. And so if you have any questions that we don't answer, send it in comments and I'll get that to you. I'll have information how to contact their office in the description. So, and again, welcome, and I will now let my guest introduce himself and tell a little bit about his company and what he does, and then we'll go from there.
Hi everyone, my name is Joe Wloszek. I'm an attorney here at HomeWithEdna Law, PLC. We're based out of Farmington, but we service throughout the state of Michigan. I'm a real estate litigator. We have transactional attorneys, we have litigators, we have a plethora of attorneys that deal with real estate issues, whether it be commercial or residential. And so I'm here to answer any questions that Edna may have, and I'm looking forward to what we have to talk about.
Thanks again. So for those of you who may not know what that means, I'm going to ask you to explain litigary.
So a litigator is somebody, if you're involved in an actual lawsuit, so a transactional, that's opposed to a transactional attorney. So if you're doing a real estate transaction, such as you need a quitclaim deed or a warranty deed or a purchase agreement drafted up, that would be more transactional. If you're involved in a dispute with your neighbor, a boundary dispute, water infiltration, some issue there, and you're now filing a lawsuit and you're going to court and you're arguing in front of a judge, that's more to the realm of a litigator. And so my practice and what I deal with is litigation. So even with COVID and not being able to actually physically go to the courthouse as often as we used to, we still have a lot of Zoom hearings and motion practice and trying to resolve cases to the best of our ability in favor of our clients.
So that you all have that understanding of the differences. So if you call a law office and you tell them what you want, they kind of decide from there which attorney will best serve you, based upon what your needs are and at what stage you are with whatever that complaint or issue that you have. So I'm going to ask Joe a question that we just briefly talked about before because it's prevalent and it's so common. So everyone knows you have your contract and the buyer wants to know what happens if the seller breaches. The seller wants to know what happens if the buyer breaches, and those breaches are different. One of the biggest things that we have a problem with is that seller disclosure and what to do. So the seller fills it out and there's some information on there that says it's not guaranteed or whatever to the best of their knowledge. The proof of them not disclosing or not telling the full story, I don't know. In my experience, I haven't had someone who actually has successfully gone against the seller due to misinformation on a seller disclosure. And so as realtors, sometimes we think that why bother? Because you can't get anything anyway, go anywhere. So asking him the question, how does that look when you do have a buyer that thinks the seller didn't disclose something? They find out after closing. They get into the house and they move in and they're moving things around and they find out, oh, this was covered up. Or I have a client, this happened to about 2 years ago, and moves into the house and a couple of months later, the wall behind the paneling is leaking, and then when she pulls it out, discovered that it had been patched before. And so what do you do in those cases? So I'm going to turn that over to Joe to have that discussion.
So our office receives potential seller disclosure violations very regularly. I probably, just personally myself, probably take 2 to 3 of these calls a week. And then you need to go through the analysis. And what are the things that are important to me? So on the seller's disclosure form that you have to fill out, there's a checkbox that there's a known issue, yes, or no, or unknown, okay? And so one of the things, for example, if there's a water intrusion, If the seller disclosed, yes, there was a water intrusion, and here's the location of it, because you fill out a little blank space as to kind of explain yourself, then that puts the buyer on notice that there was a water issue there, and that the buyer now is apprised of it, and therefore they can do their due diligence, and they can investigate it, have a contractor come out and take a look at it, or have your inspector take a look at it in detail. What I normally see, though, is situations where somebody lies on the seller's disclosure statement, says, oh, no known water problems in Michigan, which I don't know who in Michigan has never experienced a water issue. That would be a rare circumstance in my experience, but at the same time, if they check the box no, and you rely on that as the buyer, and you say to yourself, okay, there's no known water issues. Later on, you subsequently learn, after closing, after everything's supposed to be completed, and after you've signed a purchase agreement that normally has that as-is language, you bought the property as is in the condition that it's in, and then you discover something after the fact. And that discovery can be a day, it can be a week, it can be months later, depending on when you buy during the year. Because most often water issues can happen 3-4 months down the line, just due to the seasons in Michigan. So one of the things I always look for, I ask is, what was the actual disclosure that was made to you? That's the first question. Then the second question I ask is that issue that you've now discovered, was it concealed? Was it hidden in some way? Did somebody paint over an area? Did they put up new drywall to try to hide a wall that was leaking? Did they, most sellers try to fix up a place a little bit right before they sell, just to make it, more valuable and look nicer. So then the question becomes, did they know about the problem and fail to disclose it? And if that's the case, then that's something that I want to know more information. What's the value of the damage? What is it going to cost to repair it? Is it simply a matter of, you've got, for example, a water issue, and you need to hire a company to come out and like Foundation Systems of Michigan or other companies to really make sure that your basement is protected, or is it going to be more than that? Is there mold? If there is mold, what kind of mold? One of the things that we look for, I ask about, is, do you see black mold? The physical color black mold, but also black mold itself, which is technically Stachybotrys. I want to know that information, because that can really impact my analysis with a buyer as to, okay, what are the steps necessary moving forward that we need to talk about to try to make this right for you, if that makes sense.
So the problem that I see that people can run into, so what if you do find out that the seller did hide it? What are the chances that you take him to court and you do sue? He has no money, or she has no money. So what happens then?
Well, usually when a seller sells a house, they just got a big check. That's normally the way it works. Not always, but often that they're going to have a little bit of money. It's a good question, though. What happens if the money's gone? Do you still go after them? That's a determination from the potential client. What do you want to do in this circumstance? Is this a matter of principle? Do you want to go after them? And even if you get a judgment and you can't collect on it, is that important to you? Or do you just want to try to be made as whole as possible given the circumstances? It's always a balancing act, and we talk about it. Mm-hmm. From my business and my experience, one of the questions I always have when I'm talking to somebody is, has the person left the state? Going after somebody out of state, if they sell in Michigan and now they're living their life down in Florida, right? Do they have any assets in Michigan? Do they have any property in Michigan? Those are questions that they do impact the analysis, and how difficult or how much time, energy, and effort is going to need to be expended, right, even if you are successful. So those are the types of questions we typically ask, and we want to know, just from the potential client's perspective, what do you want to do? What is your best case scenario out of this? Well, their best case scenario is often, I want that person to pay for all of my damages. Mm-hmm. I have run into situations, though, where someone says, I want to rescind the contract. I want to terminate the purchase agreement, and I want that person to buy back the property from me, and I don't want to touch this property anymore, depending on what the nature of the failure to disclose is.
Wow, okay.
And that can really change the analysis and the calculus as to how aggressive that person wants to be.
See, I've never heard that option before. That's pretty serious. I've never heard that before, but yeah.
It's usually the last worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Most often the person likes the property, likes the house. They now they've got a $15,000 or $20,000 expenditure they weren't expecting, and they want contribution from the seller.
Wow. Yeah, see, in this market, it's hard because, property values are up and people are walking away with a lot of equity, but they're taking that equity and they're buying up. So chances are that they probably don't have any of that money left because they're putting it into the next home that they're moving into, or some people are making investments because everybody's starting a business these days. COVID's kind of forced people to do things on their own, make their own jobs.